Welcome to Church at Home with Rachel. Today I am filming this, I'm recording this from my new office in our new home, which we haven't moved into yet because, as you can see, it's in transition. And um, I'm doing some painting. Back here you can see this lovely color green. That green is not what the paint chip looked like when we held it up, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless. I think it's a very particular enjoyment because for me it holds that particular color holds great importance because it was the color of my grandparents' back kitchen, the outside of the house, the back kitchen. My grandmother chose that color for years and years, and although everybody kind of hated it because it was so bright, now that it's on the wall, I'm kind of enjoying it because this will be this space once we move in and get everything appointed and everything finished will be my office, and it will be where I will record church at home and write sermons and make phone calls and pray. Say my daily office. So I think this color is doesn't have to grow on me because it's something that means a lot to me already and makes me feel both nostalgic but very comfortable and safe and secure. So I think I'm going to like it. But my purpose today for filming here in this office to be is because this is a place of transition. Right now, we own the house, but we haven't moved in because we're still obviously doing work on it. But this is a place that reminds me that being in transition is not a bad place to be. Sometimes we are called, oftentimes I think, we are called to transition from one place to another, from one way of being to another. Transition is a natural part of life. But for some people, transition isn't just a natural part of life. It is something that becomes absolutely essential to who they are. Not to a big percentage of our population, but to enough people that it makes an important percentage. I have no idea what that might be in numbers for census forms and things like that, but it's enough that it has come home to me. And so today I speak to you with the permission, with names changed to protect the innocent, so to speak, with permission of one person in particular who had to make a significant transition in their life. And I'd like to talk to you about a person that I love dearly and who is as much a part of my life as anyone else that I am related to by blood or any other way. And so for the sake of just keeping their privacy, I'm going to refer to this person as Sam. I met Sam when I was first ordained, so 23 years ago. And Sam was a young person in my first parish who came to meet me and welcome me to the parish. Samantha came to my front door at the rectory, the house where I was living, and introduced herself as Sam. The thing about Sam is, though, that Sam had really, really short hair. It was spiky black hair and freckles, and rode a BMX and drank way too much Sprite pop and wore, basketball shorts and baggy t-shirts. And it took me a few weeks to figure out, to quietly ask the question of members of the congregation whether Sam was Samantha or Sam was Samuel, because Sam only introduced Sam as Sam. And once I realized that Sam was Samantha, it didn't really make much difference. It just helped me to sort of gauge where I was in this relationship. And we became priest and parishioner, but we also became friends as much as, a 27-year-old could be friends with a 13-year-old in that particular way. I think I came into Sam's life at a very important time in her life. And I know that Sam came into my life at a very important and transitional time in my life when I was learning how to be a priest, how to be a pastor. Well, we went through probably a good year and a half and got to know Sam pretty well. And she started to confide in me. And at one point, she finally said to me, this is the thing, Rachel, I like girls. Okay, this wasn't a real big surprise to me. And I didn't really care. I just wanted to make sure that the relationships that Samantha was having or would have would be healthy and safe, both physically and emotionally and spiritually. And so we talked a bit about that. And finally, she felt comfortable that, she needed, not comfortable, she felt it was time that she tell her parents. And so she went to tell her parents, and she arrived back at my house after midnight one night because her parents, um, I don't think they kicked her out. I think she felt she needed to leave because they just didn't understand. And kudos to her parents, because when you have raised a daughter, your firstborn, and you have all these beautiful ideas about walking her down the aisle or holding her first child, all of these things, and then all of a sudden she tells you that that's never going to happen. Now, this was a long time ago, so we weren't nearly the place we are today. So those conversations sounded very differently 23 years ago than they do today. And her parents were really upset, understandably so. And Sam came to me, and I called her parents and took her back home, and they started to work things out. And it was a difficult road to hoe. We lived in a town that was known worldwide for the arts community. But what the world didn't know was this particular town was also a very blue-collar factory community and had its issues, um, like most communities that have sort of a dual economic process. We had factory and we had the arts. There's often that push and pull between the two different communities as to whose is more important. And the blue collar part of this town was not nearly as progressive or liberal as the arts part was. And so working in factories, dealing with folks who were openly homophobic and made no bones about making fun of and ridiculing people who were gay or lesbian. This is where Sam's parents worked. This is the world they lived in, where they had their friends and their barbecues, and these are the people they hung out with. And it was a really difficult time for her parents because they were trying to deal with this bombshell news that their daughter, for whom they had such incredible dreams, as do most parents, had just upended them out of the blue. They had no clue, and bang, the world just blew up. It was over. Something significant happened for one of Sam's parents. Some folks at work said some things, and all of a sudden, her parent heard them in a different way. Because those jokes, those homophobic jokes, weren't just about some other homo person over there, or some guy working on the line, or some girl working over there. They were all of a sudden about this parent's child. And there was the beginning of a significant shift in how they saw their child. No longer was it Sam, their daughter, who was a deviant, but Sam, who was their daughter, who was about to face off with people like that, who said things and acted like that about their daughter. And over time, it didn't take much time at all, but over time, Sam's parents came to love and accept her and appreciate and just be with her in a way that was incredibly beautiful. And I was blessed to witness that. As time went on and Sam and I got closer, and she walked through what it was like to come out at school, be a high school student, and realize that people are now looking at you differently. And, the change room for gym class is a whole different world when other girls are looking at you thinking like, oh, is she staring at me? And things they hadn't done a minute and a half before when they thought she was just like them. Sam grew and matured in an incredible way and finally came to me and told me this story about being about 4 or 5 years old. And she got out of bed one morning, and she had long hair. Mom kept her hair really long. And she got out of bed in the morning, and she looked in the mirror, and she was shocked because what she saw was a little girl. But when she looked in the mirror, before she saw her image, what she felt in herself was that she was a little boy. And Sam carried this with her all through her growing up years, right into her teenage years. This idea that, wait a minute, when I look in the mirror and when other people look at me, they see a girl. And now they see a gay girl, a girl who likes girls. But what I know in my heart to be true is that the normal me, who I really am, is a boy who likes girls, just like every other boy. The difference is that I have girl parts. I don't have boy parts. And so when Sam told me that, I was like, okay, I've only been ordained a few years. They do not teach you this in seminary. Oh my God, what do you do? This is long before Google was a thing. You could try to research things on the internet and it wasn't that easy. So we just walked and talked and I listened. I did a lot of listening. I did a lot of paying attention, a lot of reading, trying to find books in the library and resources in bookstores about how do you deal with something like this. Because I was aware of the trans community out in the world, but I didn't know how to really have a clue what it was. And so I walked with Sam and I talked with Sam, and she talked about her desire to become who she really was, who she really is, to be on the outside who she is on the inside. And so she had made the decision, and she'd spoken with her parents, who were like rock stars through this whole process, at least from the outside, looking in. They looked like they were handling things in stride, and kudos to them. Incredible, incredible parents. And she made the decision that at some point when she could afford it and when it was appropriate, she was going to go through the process of becoming a guy. She was going to do the surgery and all the psychological work. And trust me, there is a pile of work you need to do before they will let you do anything to your physical body. Sam proved that. And so Sam started the process of learning how to go from being Samantha to being Samuel. I remember in around that time was about when I met Rob, my husband. And we were just beginning to date at the time. And I remember he had come up for church one day, and Sam had come with me from my one church to the other. And I had a meeting. So the two of them went off to the coffee shop, and they were going to wait for me there and have coffee while I had my meeting. And when I was done the meeting, I walked down the coffee shop, and I walked in, and the two of them were sitting in a booth. And I overheard Rob telling Sam, listen, if you're going to be a guy, then you have to learn how to be a man. You're going to hold the door open for your girlfriend. And when you're walking down the street holding hands, you always stand on the street side of the road, of the sidewalk. You never let your girl stand, and he's telling her these things. They're like guy code. It was like, okay, I didn't know any of this stuff. This is just stuff that he did. And he was my first, I'd never really dated, so this was all new to me. I thought this was what everybody did. But Rob met Samantha, cared about Samantha enough to listen to Sam tell Sam's story, and said, okay, so if that's what you're going to do, if that's who you are, then let's get you up to speed with what every other 16, 17-year-old guy knows or should know by now. And I think that's the moment when I realized I really did love him. That he loved someone else that I love so much that he would be willing to do this with no questions asked. And then let me tell you, some of the conversations they had after that were just blew my mind. Very cool, but very this is not what a normal priest goes through. These are not normal things to talk about. And that's okay. That was a beautiful gift to me as I watched Sam in this process of becoming Samuel. Through the years, we'll skip ahead, and I moved away and did other things, but through the years, Sam did go through the process of physically becoming a man. And Sam, more importantly, went through the process of emotionally and spiritually becoming a man, to the point where Sam met a beautiful young woman, call her Joanne, and was upfront with Joanne about everything. And Joanne just loved him back for exactly who Sam was, inside and out. And I got the phone call that said, would you come back to Ontario and would you celebrate at our wedding? And I'm going to tell you, best wedding ever. I have never been so pleased or more proud of being present, because not only was Sam a former parishioner, but I felt like Sam was family. And I had the privilege of standing up and introducing Sam and Joanne as husband and wife, and inviting him to kiss his bride, and seeing them, two people who were beautiful individuals by themselves, coming together to make this incredibly extraordinary new being that is when two people come together, regardless of gender. When two people who are, in my mind, created by God from the beginning to go together, when they find themselves, when they find each other, there is nothing more beautiful than that. The day of the wedding, though, I had a real shocker because in my mind, I was getting to know Samuel, because all of this had happened. All of the big stuff, the big changes had officially happened after I'd moved out of the province and we'd only spoken on the phone and emailed. And here I was about to do Sam's wedding. Sam came to my hotel room before the morning of the wedding and sat down and said, listen, we chatted about a few things, and he said something that really kind of felt like was ripping my heart out. He said, you need to understand that Samantha is dead. Samantha is no longer. I am Samuel. And in my mind, Samantha is gone. She's dead. I accepted that because that was what Sam's truth is. My truth is, whether it's allowable or acceptable or not, my truth is that Samantha is still alive, because Samantha is in there, is an essential part of who Samuel is. Never can I separate out Samantha from Samuel, because they are just Sam. This young man who is, well, not so young anymore, because I'm not so young anymore either. But this is Sam, who is a brilliant young man, who is a passionate and compassionate young man, who knows well enough to let his wife make the big decisions, and who does what she says because, hey, he's a smart guy and she is a brilliant young woman. This is a young man who has been able to help his family through some difficult times and has allowed them to help him through difficult times, because Sam is Sam. We are living in a world in which more and more people are able to recognize that who they are at their core may indeed not be who other people see them as. And they have to do that hard work of discovering and figuring out how they move into that new reality, whether they choose to make the transition from being one gender to the other, whether they choose to live in their gender fluidity and what that means for them, or even if they are making the decision to ignore how they're feeling from the inside because of pressures from the outside. I know it's not a great analogy, but I look around and I can see, like, outside my window, there's a big sort of park space out there. And there's a goose who's been hanging out by herself every day for a while now. And there's magpies and seagulls, and I look at them and I think they're birds. Those are all birds. But they're each so different. And I don't think to myself that one bird is better than another bird. They're just different. And I would never in a million years judge that a goose is better than a magpie or better than a seagull. They all poop everywhere. They're all a pain in the butt for that. But they're all birds, but they're all different. And I'm beginning to learn that I need to not look at humanity, God's children, as male or female or like what. I have to look at God's children as each person. They're people. They are persons. And that is where the beauty derives from, not from their gender or their non-gender or their bi-gender or any of these things. They are individual people created in God's image, an image that we are not encouraged. As a matter of fact, we are not meant to imagine, because God is not he, God is not she, God is not they, God is. So why can't we just be? Why can't Sam is? Why can't somebody else just be? Why do we have an issue? Why is it so important that we pigeonhole people and say, you have to be this or you have to be that, but you can't be nothing, you can't be everything? Why does it matter? So as I move in this transition from my one home into another, as I continue to grow and transition into the priest I will become in God's world, I think it's really important that we allow people the opportunity and the freedom to live in transition, because whether we like it or not, We are always in transition. Seasons are changing. Our jobs change. Our relationships change. Our children grow up. Sometimes our children move back. Sometimes they never leave home. But we're always in transition anyway. So why do we say this transition is okay and this one isn't? I don't understand that. So today, as I sit here in this empty space with a little bit of paint on the walls and some ideas and some hopes and dreams about the amazing things that could happen between these four walls, maybe the great Canadian novel will be written. Maybe that sermon that really helps somebody will be penned in this place. Maybe a prayer that changes the world, or at least mine, will be uttered here. Who knows what will happen in this place, this place that is currently in transition. The point is that because it's in transition, anything could happen. Anything could happen. So I think that we need to stop looking at people and saying that this is wrong or this is right. And we need to look at people and say, instead of black and white, we need to say, you know what? This is the world of possibilities. Anything could happen. So as I think about my friend Sam, whose permission I have if you see this on YouTube, when I think about Sam, and I think about Sam's wife, and I think about the lessons that Sam has taught me, both as Samantha and as Samuel, and I think about who I am becoming, who I am transitioning into as a woman, as a priest, as a wife, as a stepmother, as a friend, as a daughter, as a neighbor, all these things. I need to thank Sam for teaching me to be open to the possibilities, those possibilities that come with the gift of transition. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you're thinking. Please be gentle and kind in your responses. Even if you disagree with me, there's no need for anybody to be nasty, because we can have a conversation, but we don't need to have a shouting match. Let's be kind. Have a great day. God bless you, and thanks for checking out Church at Home with Rachel today.